Cinderella watched the guard disappear into the crypt, shivering with cold and fear. She'd heard him call into the tomb, and when there had come no reply, her heart sank into the pit of her stomach. She knew that Thorn was dead. That thing that killed him was still around. She backed away from the door. She had to get away before it got her too. Turning, she started to run. What if Thorn was still alive? Maybe he just couldn't talk. He might be unconscious. She stopped at the corner of a tomb and looked back. Sin wasn't a Christian, but she believed in a creator. Whether it was God or the goddess, she didn't know. But she believed the creator to be good and just. She prayed now that Thorn was still alive and not hurt too badly. What did that thing do to him anyway? It looked like it French kissed him. What if it bit him? Maybe it gnawed his face off. God, don't think it like that. What the hell was that thing? A vampire? A zombie? How could such a thing exist? But it did. She saw it with her own eyes, right in front of her. Sin pushed those questions aside. It didn't matter what it was, only that Thorn was alive. It had been a minute since the guard had entered the sepulchre. She hadn't heard or seen anything since. What was happening in there? Did the thing get the guard too? She was debating going back to find out when a dirty gray figure stepped forth from behind the Eddington crypt. In the light of day, the thing was even more terrible looking than it had been in the dark. The once white bridal gown was now stained with dust and what looked like dried blood. The dress hung loose on the bride's gaunt frame. There was no way she could be alive. There was no meat on her bones. Her skin was brown and black from years of slow decay. She shambled along the wall of the tomb slowly, stiffly, her arms hanging lifelessly at her sides. Cinderella wanted to scream, but her throat was choked with fear. If she made a sound, surely the bride would turn and come after her. Sin remained perfectly still, watching the undead horror creep closer and closer to the open door of the Eddington crypt. Despite her fear, she knew she had to do something. If Thorn was still alive, he wouldn't be for long if that thing got a hold of him again. Still, she hesitated until the bride was at the doorstep. "Look out!" she screamed. Without stopping, the bride turned its head. Cinderella recoiled as the thing's colorless eyes pierced her soul. In that instant, Sin felt as if she'd been marked for death, doomed to die by the bony hands of that unholy monster. Then the bride disappeared into the crypt. Sin stared at the empty doorway, her mind still reeling, the bride's eyes still burning in her brain. A gunshot rang out from inside the tomb, jolting Cinderella from her morbid trance. A second shot followed the first. "Thorn!" she yelled. She wanted to run to the mausoleum and try to save her friend, but her body refused to move in that direction. A third gun blast reverberated from inside the tomb, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Then there was silence. It was the silence of the dead. Sin watched the black doorway, hoping against hope to see Thorn or even the guard come walking out. But she knew in her heart the awful truth. They were both dead. She also knew she had to leave before that monster came out and killed her too. After a moment of hesitation, she turned and started walking. She should have been running, but her legs were stiff and heavy with the weight of guilt and despair. She leaned on the nearby tomb to steady herself. It was like one of those nightmares where no matter how fast you try to run, you never got anywhere. You couldn't escape from the monster chasing you. The Eddington crypt was out of sight around the corner behind her, but Cinderella still saw it in her mind's eye. She imagined the bride was creeping out of the door and headed this way. Sin kept her ears pricked, listening for even the slightest sound. A sudden breeze blew at her back, causing goosebumps to rise on her naked skin. It might have been her imagination, but she thought she detected the same foul odor she'd smelled inside the sarcophagus. The stench of death and decay. Her heart skipped a beat. Don't look back, she told herself. In her mind, she saw the bride at the corner of the tomb behind her. She could almost feel dead eyes staring at her bare back. Run, she told herself. But her feet refused to move any faster. She heard footsteps running towards her. They sounded like they were coming from somewhere ahead, but she wasn't sure. The sound was bouncing off the walls of the tombs. Run, damn it, run! She started to run. The footsteps were right on top of her. She screamed as a man darted out from around a crypt. He was wearing the uniform of a guard. He pointed a gun at her. Where's Warren? He demanded. He's in the tomb, she said, trying to catch her breath. The man raced by her. No, she yelled, turning as he went by. Don't go back there. He ignored her. Stop. She watched him disappear around a corner. She was alone again. Any moment she expected to hear him scream. Seconds ticked by. Surely he had ran into the bride by now. Talk to me, Warren, she heard the man shout. Are you hurt? There was a long silence. What's happening? Sin wondered. Moments later, there was a muffled cry of alarm. He must be inside the crypt. Don't move, she thought she heard him say. Then a gunshot. Even though she'd been expecting it, she jumped at the sound. The shock propelled her into action. Turning, she started running, even as a second gun blast thundered through the autumn air. Seconds later, there was a scream that was quickly cut off by another gunshot. After the last echo faded, the only thing she heard was the soft thud of her footfalls and the ragged sound of her breathing. Cinderella passed the last of the standing tombs, leaving the shadowy lanes of the necropolis behind. Sunlight warmed her naked skin. Now she was running through a field of gravestones, heading for the front gates, zigzagging occasionally to avoid tripping over a marker. She was halfway there when she realized there was a problem. The gates were closed. The gates were closed! Adrian and Chelsea were on the other side. Adrian was jumping up and down, waving at her to hurry. Come on, he yelled. He must see the bride chasing her. Oh, God, she had to be getting close. Sin fought the urge to look back. That would only slow her down. Instead, she tried to run faster, but there was only so fast she could go while navigating the tombstones. Open the gates, she shouted. I can't, Adrian said. Open the gates, she repeated. I can't, it's locked, he said. You'll have to climb over. I can't, she said. She'd never make it. It'd take too long. She wasn't sure she could do it, even if she had all day to climb. What was she going to do? She was going to die. She was going to get eaten by a walking corpse. Hurry, Adrian said as she passed the last of the tombstones in her way. Sin didn't head directly for the gates, but to the left of them. The gates were too tall to climb, being taller than the walls on either side of them. Immediately adjacent to the gates was one of the sections of solid brick. There was no way she could scale its height, but she might be able to climb the ironwork of crisscrossed bars next to it. Exhausted and out of breath, Cinderella staggered to a stop just inside the wall. What the fuck is going on? Chelsea said. Why are you naked? Sin ignored her. Gulping for air, she grabbed a hold of the bars for support and realized that she still had the flashlight in her hand. She dropped the light. The wall was only 6 feet high, yet it seemed insurmountable. Climb, Sin, said Adrian. You have to climb. Putting a bare foot on the lowest horizontal bar, she pulled herself up, placing her other foot on the next higher bar. The hard iron was killing her feet, but fear pushed her onwards and upwards. Hurry, Sin! Was that a footstep she heard behind her? Any second she expected to feel bony hands grab her ankles and yank her off the wall. She was almost at the top when a gust of wind blew, tickling her bare skin. Sin screamed, thinking it was the bride, and kicked her feet. She slipped down to a lower bar, banging her shins against the hard irons. "What's wrong with you?" Chelsea said. "Sin, come on, you're almost there," said Adrian. "Hurry!" "Help me!" screamed Cinderella. "Okay," he said. Sin finally made it to the top. She swung her right leg over to the other side, fearful of impaling herself on the pointed tips of the vertical bars. Adrian grabbed her foot and guided it to a secure position. As she straddled the wall, the iron spikes mere inches from her naked crotch, she cast a quick glance into the graveyard. Moving this way was indeed the wasted figure of the bride, only she was several dozen yards away on the other side of the field of grave markers. She was walking slowly, but steadily, through the garden of tombstones, as though not in a hurry to reach her next victim. Still, this did not ease Cinderella's fears. Sin shifted her weight and swung her other leg over the wall. One of the spikes scratched her thigh. Ignoring the pain, she climbed down about halfway, then jumped to the ground. Her tired legs buckled under her. She fell backwards, her bare ass slamming into the grass. A blade tickled her bunghole. "Come on, let's get the hell out of here," Adrian said. He locked his hands under her armpits and pulled her to her feet. His fingers brushed against her breasts as they retreated. Cinderella spun around and slapped him. She was furious that he ran out on her, and only slightly perturbed that he just copped a feel. "Damn you," she said. "Sorry," he said. "Barbara, what the fuck is going on?" said Chelsea. "What was all that shooting? Where are the guards?" "They're dead, they're all dead." "What do you mean, dead? Who killed them?" "She did," Sin said, turning and pointing at the bride, who was still walking toward them at the same languid pace. "Come on, let's go," said Adrian. "She did? Who is she?" Chelsea said. "She's the fucking Grim Reaper," Adrian said. Chelsea sighed. "Shit, Barbara, this isn't funny. You guys had me going there for a moment." "This ain't a fucking joke," he said. "It's fucking real, and we're all going to die if we don't fucking leave right now." "Don't yell at me!" "He's right," said Cinderella, watching the bride. Stains on the thing's gown were red-brown in the late afternoon sun. Leaves fluttered in the air as a cold breeze blew through the cemetery. Again, Sin thought she could smell the fetid stench of the grave. "This isn't a joke, Chelsea. She killed Thorne and the 2 guards, and now she's coming for us." "Stop it," Chelsea said. "Stop it right now. No more games." "This isn't a game," Adrian said. "We've got to get out of here." He turned and jumped into Chelsea's car. "Barbara, tell me this is all just an elaborate Halloween prank." Sin turned to Chelsea. "It's not a joke," she said. She started towards the convertible. "We should leave." "This can't be happening," Chelsea said. "But it is happening," said Sin. Adrian stood on the passenger's side seat. "Come on, damn it," he said. A car horn honked, startling Cinderella. The car stopped next to the convertible. It was full of boys from school. They cheered and whistled out their windows, gawking at her nakedness. She gave them the middle finger, then climbed into the back seat of Chelsea's car. "Need a ride?" said the driver of the other car. "I'll give you a ride." "Yeah, we'll give you the ride of your life," said another boy. She gave them both her middle fingers. Chelsea walked around to the driver's side of her car. "You can come with us, too," said the other driver. "Not even if my life depended on it," Chelsea said, before getting behind the wheel. "Come on, you don't know what you're missing." "Why don't you ask her?" Adrian said, pointing towards the graveyard. The bride was almost at the halfway mark. Her withered face was clearly visible to all. "Shit!" said one of the boys. "Damn, that's a good costume," said another. "Go," Sin said. "But my tire's flat," Chelsea said. "Who cares?" Adrian said. "Drive!" Chelsea turned the key in the ignition. The The engine turned over a couple of times, then roared to life. Go, go, go! The convertible lurched forward. The flat tire protested, emitting a loud grinding noise. Cinderella watched the bride. The undead woman turned her head, her sunken eyes following the crippled car as it limped away. Yet the bride continued shambling straight towards the gates. The boys were still parked right outside the cemetery. Get out of there, Sin yelled. Even though they were assholes, they didn't deserve to die. The bride opened her mouth. Black smoke spewed from between her wasted lips. Over the roar of the engine, Sin thought she heard a moan. The cloud passed through the iron bars, drifting towards the boys. Go! The car sped off, tires squealing. The black cloud retreated, flowing back into the bride's mouth. What the hell was that thing? Chelsea turned right at the corner of the cemetery, driving along the western wall of the graveyard. Sin watched the bride until it was out of sight. Even then, she continued to watch the cemetery as long as she could, fearful that the bride would follow them.